Hello everyone and welcome to the Foreman community demo number 60. If you have any questions to ask, you can ask us on Freenode or IRC channel with the #theforeman tag channel, or you can ask us in the YouTube live channel. Before we start with the demo, I would like to ask you all to increase the quality of the video because that will help you to watch the video in a better quality. So today in agenda, we have new attended action failed by Lukash. Then we have Jonathan who will speak about deduplicate hypervisor records. Then Kavita will enlighten us with how we can do GC provisioning. And in the end, we have Greg who will tell us about how about the community survey and will show us a lot of graphs related to that. So let's start with the first talk, which is by Lukash. So over to you, Lukash.
All right, how's everyone today? So this sprint, I was a PR of mine was merged, a couple of PRs actually, maybe 3 or 4, which improved the reporting of installation errors. So basically, when for unattended installations, we have a call home, which we like to call as a build call home or build request, which is basically a foreman / unattended / build, which turns off the build mode, which this host over here is actually in a build mode. I could do this clicking the button cancel build, or when the host finishes installation, the script would do it as well. Now, a couple of services ago, we added build status. So we have a couple of statuses, an overall status if all statuses are okay. So this host, everything looks good. It is in okay state because the build, it's in build mode, so it's pending installation. And the build mode was entered about 2 hours ago. And we now also show token, build token, so you can copy and paste it if needed. So this has been there for a while now. When we do build request, we're using wget or curl in a Kickstart or Preseed or Finish or other templates. We're actually doing a get request, HTTP request, and I've prepared a change, which is now in develop branch, that it also accepts. There is a new command called failed. So instead of build, there's a failed command, and basically, if I go to tables, it was templates. And if I go to, let's say, Kickstart, and I search for the default Kickstart, which is Kickstart default. Maybe Kickstart default finish is also okay because it should contain the call home. I guess it's not here. So let me just quickly build. It's called build. So we used to have the wget command in provisioning templates, in a Kickstart template, and a Preseed template. Now we have a new snippet, which is called build. No, I'm not sure why I don't see it here. So kind is a script. So it's a script, test script. Name equals build. It's not here. However, what I can do, I was re-importing my templates this morning, community templates. Foreman community templates. And it's here. So now it's a snippet, right? And this is already in develop branch, and all the other templates which actually needs to call home uses this snippet instead. And it's much more, as you can see, it's much more rich. We actually try to use curl. If not available, then wget, and then we are falling back to wget from the embedded shell from the, how's this called? I don't remember. That it's used for a few systems we do support provisioning for, and it has slightly different parameters. It doesn't implement all the. It's not a wget. It's just a clone basically, and so this is the first change, and it is quite a big change. Foreman 1.22 will be the first release, I think, with this. So hopefully there will be doing a test week, and I'll be covering both Ubuntu Debian and Red Hat Fedora systems. So testing this, it's been tested, of course, but you know, just RC testing if this works fine. And now it does support also the failed. So let me show you some Kickstart template, Kickstart version, Kickstart default. This is it. And in the end, okay, here it is. In the end, what we do now is we are leveraging this new endpoint. So during the PostScriptlet, it is being, the output of the PostScriptlet is being logged to an installation log file. I think we were doing this already. Now the log file is actually at the end of the installation snippet. We touch a temporary file, and then if this temporary file is present, then we know that all the commands were successful. So we're actually doing the call, which is built. So there is no change here. We are actually using the snippet now instead of having the wget here. And one change though, we were doing get. Now we are doing a correct REST correct REST method, which is HTTP post. In this case, because we are changing the state, the get is still there for backwards compatibility. So don't worry. But we're now doing a post. So maybe if you have a proxy or firewall, be aware that this is one of the changes that this Foreman will be doing. The managed hosts will be doing post instead get. And if the temporary file does not exist, that means that something did not really work. Now in that case we are sending a failed. So it's a /_ and we also send the log file along with the query. So the both built and failed endpoints now also accept input actually, and that is the installation file log. And what happens is, this is an example of a failed host. So this installation somewhere failed somewhere in the middle of the post-installation script. As you can see, the state is installation error now. And if there is an installation error, new field appears here, which is called build errors. And there is a link log from OS installer. If you click on that, Foreman should actually show the contents of the log file. Now this is a dummy content. I've just uploaded a Foreman setup to README because I was working on Foreman setup today. But it will accept 64K of characters, and then it will cut the rest. So there will be a message like the rest was cut or something, truncated. And that's it. That's just the feature. So this definitely won't catch all the errors. Like if you had an installation error, like a kickstart a syntax error, so the Anaconda will blow up or something. This will not appear here. However, if you have any kind of a command that failed, let's say subscription manager failed to whatever register the system, and it exited with non-zero, then the and of course, if you have a fail in the shell, because fail is not, I think, the default, then this will catch and show you the errors. So this is it. This is the feature. It's very small, but I wanted to cover it in the demo carefully because it is somehow a change of behavior. This is the from get to post change, and now it's also called failed. So you can go ahead and leverage this in your templates. So this update, this Foreman 122 update, be aware that these are the changes. So make sure if it works fine. That is pretty much it.
Great. I think it's a really nice change, and it makes it more informative on the host page about the failed or the build state. So great. Thanks, Lukash, for the introduction to the feature. Let's move on to our next talk. That will be deduplicate hypervisor records with Jonathan Turner. So over to you, Jonathan.
Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a great day. I'm here to share with you kind of a change in Catello in order to kind of keep our backend databases clean and kind of provide a better quality of life around hypervisor check-ins when using Virtu. I don't have the data here on the list, but the situation that would arise was when updating the hypervisor ID field in the Virtu config and checking that hypervisor in, we'd have duplicate records being created here because the hostname we create reflects that hypervisor ID. So you'd have records showing the old hypervisor ID and the new hypervisor ID. And with some changes we have now, that should no longer be the case. So let me jump to my terminal to show you what I'm talking about here. This is kind of an example Virtu configuration. And there's a field here called hypervisor ID. And when we create that host in Catello, when Virtu is checking in, we put that field into the host name. Like I mentioned, we were getting duplicate host profiles. So over here, I have kind of a JSON representation of what that Virtu check-in looks like. And so I'm going to run a curl command to check those hypervisors in and kind of demonstrate the change in functionality I'm talking about here. So if I refresh my view, I'm going to have two new records in this list, and those will correspond to the two hypervisors in that JSON that I just had on my screen. And we notice that, for example, this one is Virtu-261C4. And if I jump back to my terminal, sorry, I'll try not to jump so many times here. But we can see here that this 261C4 corresponds to one of the hypervisor ID fields in my post that I made to Catello, and reminder that came from my Virtu configuration. So if I were to change my hypervisor ID, I would want this to be updated in Catello. So I'm changing this hypervisor ID, and for the sake of record keeping, I'm going to open up these hypervisor here, 2E78 in a new tab, just so that we can refer back to it when the time comes. And now that I've changed my hypervisor ID, I'm going to simulate the hypervisor check-in once again. And it's responded. We'll give it a few seconds to update the database. And if what I'm telling you is correct, we should still have two records here, right? Because I haven't created a new hypervisor, but rather I've simply updated an existing hypervisor to give it a different hypervisor ID, which is basically just kind of a unique identifier that helps the user identify their hypervisors in their various environments. So here it is. Virtu test ID. The 2 at the end here corresponds to the organization ID that it's registered in. And let's open this in a new tab. So previously, like I mentioned, we'd have these duplicate records. And we'd have not only a duplicate record in Catello itself, but also in the Candlepin backend, where kind of all the hypervisor heavy lifting is occurring. So now, if we compare these two host profiles, we should see that they have the same UUID, which is the backend identifier in Candlepin. So this one is FD01C8. And if we compare over here, we see that it is indeed the same, FD10A. And if also we look in the URL, the host is 184 for its ID, and over here also 184. So we're no longer going to have all these duplicate records for a single hypervisor who has changed its hypervisor ID, making it a little clearer to the user as to what they're looking at, and no kind of junk data in our databases. And that's all I had to show for today. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan, for such a nice overview. Next, we have Kavita Gaikwad, who will show us all about GC provisioning. So over to you, Kavita.
Thanks, Rahul. So today I'm going to show the GC provisioning. So like few of you might know that the GC compute resource is broken due to the API changes, Google API changes, but now it is fixed. And in addition to this, the cloud integration is added to the Google compute resource. So before I show, let me share the demo. I pre-recorded it.
Kavita, are you trying to share your screen? Because it's not seen, I guess.
Let me try. Is it visible?
Yes, it is now. Yeah.
Okay. So let's see like how it is working. So previously, users are not able to create the Google Compute resource. And the change is that previously we are using the P12 files, but now the format is changed. User needs to generate the JSON format file from their Google account. And you can see that once you fill this field, so the zones are loaded. So please make sure like before you provision the machine, like you have correct provisioning templates are assigned to your OS. Here you can see that the compute resource is created. VM machine list is also visible to you. Now let's see how to create image. So here also you can see we have added the user data checkbox for the Google Compute resource so that user can enable the cloud in it. So here I'm just creating the center as 7 minutes. For now I'm just leaving it as it's. And one more, I will create one more image to show the cloud in it. So for that, Google is supporting like for the only the container optimized images contain the cloud in it installed. So make sure whatever the image you are using, it has the cloud in it, already in it. And here you can give any name except the root user, because for the Google Compute, like root login is disabled by default. So you can give any name here as a username. And for cloud init, like as I said, it only provides the container optimized images. So it starts from the prefix cause. So here you can see I have created two images. One is for the cloud init and one is this normal image base for the space provisioning. Let's see the creation part. So just for the filtering, I'm just adding the demo prefix here. So here you can see previously it is named as an external IP, but now it is changed as they have removed the external IP field. So it is just assigned the dynamic IP for your host. Here I'm using the finish template, and domain is currently it is required or mandatory field. That's why I'm selecting domain here. So as you see, it started provisioning. So finish template will take some time because we update packages inside the finish template. So as I said before provisioning, make sure you have the correct provisioning template assigned to your OS. You have set proper unattended URL in under the settings, and you downloaded your keys. So here you can see that it is saying the installed and your machine is created. I'm just deleting this machine and I'll show the cloud init user data using the user data template. So all other fields remains the same except the template part. Here you can select the image. Here you can see that I have assigned the user data template to my OS. It will start provisioning your machine. So here it is showing the pending installation. I've seen like for many people, they need to refresh this page to get installed status. So it is installed, and let's see here, the machine is created. I'll again delete this machine. So this is, so I have shown you like the image-based provisioning using the cloud init as well as using the finish template. There are still some edge cases that needs to be handled, but basic provisioning is now working. So I would like just try out this thing and let me know if you face any issues. But make sure once you downloaded the keys, it should be present on your server and that file should be readable from your application. Foreman. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing this really informative GC cloud computing with us, Kavita. And moving on, we have Greg who will share quick highlights from the community survey. So moving to you, Greg.
Hello, hello, hello. How you all doing? So it's been a little while. I was here a couple of demos ago to talk a bit about survey things. I thought I'd come back and talk some more. So quick disclaimers as usual. Firstly, this is not published yet. Tomer and Rahul and Ori and I are kind of going over the first draft, and then we'll get a PR up for the blog as usual for everyone else to comment on. But we just want to iron out the obvious issues with graphs that are not right and all that kind of thing, save you all guys some time. So you will get to see this. You will get a chance to comment on it in the very near future. We're almost done with it. But since the demo was today, it seemed to make sense to come and talk a bit about it. The other disclaimer is that anything I tell you today is my opinion. I'm not on the community team anymore. So it's not my place to tell you what the community should or shouldn't do. I'm going to tell you what I think and what I think things mean. And you can take your own conclusions, draw your own conclusions and opinions from it. The final thing I also want to say is that this is not the end of the story. Unlike in previous years where I've written a conclusions section at the end of the blog post, that's not what we're going to do this year. Because this is long enough already, and because there are other interesting things we can still do with this data, this is very much just a summary of the individual questions in the survey. The survey is huge, right? It's 55 questions or something like that. And even just summarizing each one of those questions is a lot of words. This document is something like 2,000 words and 55 graphs, or more than, it might be more than 50, like 60 graphs or something. So just summarizing the data alone is a huge piece of work, and that's now done. But the more interesting questions are when you start combining different things together. And I'll show an example of that may or may not make it into this document when it's published, because we might move it to a secondary thing. But what there will definitely be is a sort of a conclusions piece, what should we do as a community piece that follows up on this in maybe a week or two after the first post goes out. And that's really because this is long enough already, but also because that post deserves to get its own set of attention, right? It should be a separate entry on the blog post so that the people who just want to know what the community team is thinking can go there and read that one and don't have to wade through this enormous document, right? So with that said, let me show you some things. As I mentioned the last time I was on a demo, these surveys are now weighted. There's an appendix in this document that shows you how that weighting has been done, if you care about the gory details. If not, just bear in mind that they are weighted, and that tries to give us some representative sample of the whole community rather than just the people who filled out the survey. So what do I think is worth commenting on? I'm not going to go through every single graph, although we do have time technically, but I don't want to take up that much time. The things that I think are notable, I'll quickly run through though. So things haven't really changed in most cases. I do note that we are up on the newer members of the community. That's doubled since last year, and that's very encouraging to see. That's really just a return to form. If you look at the 2017 data, we actually dipped down in 2018. Now we're coming back up again in 2019. That's good to know, and we do want to see that continue. You do need new lifeblood in the project, in my opinion. It's also noteworthy that the number of people rating the project highly has dropped a bit. So actually there's more people at 4, less people at 5. I personally feel this is just law of large numbers. As the community grows, you'll get more people rating it in the middle, and the extremes will get smaller. So I don't think that's particularly notable, but I did want to just call it out. This one is the comments about how we rate releases. So we ask people how well releases work for them on different categories. You can see 2018 on the top and 2019 on the bottom. Again, not much to talk about there. But the one I did want to call out, and it's much the same for like how do people find our support, the forum, IRC, etc. The one thing I wanted to call out on the forum is the pretty much huge jump in 5-star ratings for our forum. Last year when we asked this question, Discourse had only been running for about a month. Now it's been bedded in for a year, and people seem to really like. You can see the other numbers haven't shifted that much, but actually there's a big increase from 3 to 5. So that's really encouraging. I'm very happy to see that. Nothing else has really changed. We seem to be still doing a reasonably good job. Again, we get this tendency to trending towards the center, but otherwise it's fine. Deployments and hardware, again, I don't think there's anything massively significant here. The only one that I would call out is the big jump in CentOS. take up at the expense of mainly Debian and to some extent Ubuntu, although Ubuntu is still prevalent on hosts. But both Ubuntu and Debian are down for Foreman servers. Debian is down for hosts as well. So that's interesting. But other than that, not too bad. In terms of what hardware people are using, again, not a big difference here. It seems pretty straightforward to me. Plugins, I've done this graph slightly differently this year. I'll show you last year's graph. This is last year's graph where I had 2 bar graphs side by side. I have done a slightly better job this year. I personally think this is more readable because with that one you have to find any particular bar you're interested in. If it wasn't one of the ones I colored, you have to find it for yourself in both graphs. It's kind of awkward. Whereas here you get the percentages and a nice little line. And so what I do want to call out is how well Catello's done, how well remote execution has done, and also this purple line here, how well templates has done in terms of growing their support in the community. So that's very, very nice to see. A few things that have dropped that are notable. Default host group is way down, which I can only cheer because it's my plugin and it should die really. And that's interesting, but it seems to be sort of populated. Column view is down as well, I think, because it was broken for such a long time. There's a few things in there. You could find more interesting things, I'm sure. Compute stuff hasn't really, there's not a lot to say here. The only one I will call out is Tomo wanted to know if people use the unattended flag. The answer here is no. Nobody uses it. So bear in mind that the unattended flag only applies to people who don't do provisioning in the first place, right? Because if you're going to use the unattended flag, it turns off all of the provisioning stuff in the UI. So this graph on the right only applies to the 15% of people who said they don't do provisioning here on the left, which when you multiply the two together, you get 3.5% of the community are using the unattended flag. So probably okay to drop that one. Tom wanted to know if we can get rid of it. The answer looks like yes. So that's interesting. Compute resources, no real change here apart from Docker just dropping off the face of the earth. I'm not quite sure what happened there. I've got a to-do here. Did we get rid of the Docker plugin? I don't know, to be honest. But yeah, that's gone way down. Everything else is pretty stable. Proxies, again, nothing particularly interesting there. Now, this is one of the ones I wanted to call out. So let's start with this here. We asked the question, what should we do on the UI? The UI team sent me a raft of 5 questions they wanted me to put in the survey, so I did that. And so this is the first 2 questions. How satisfied are you, and what UI work should we do? And we did it as a multiple choice, not an open text question, and these are the results, right? So it's kind of interesting because 33% say we should be more customizable and 50% say we should be more opinionated. And those 2 things are opposing, right? You can't really do both. Maybe if you're really clever, but largely being more flexible is the antithesis of being opinionated, right? And so the question is, which one of these is right? Now, this is where I get into what I was talking about at the start, where I say, well, it's very interesting to start combining the answers. So suppose we were to take a look at this question on the left, how satisfied are you? Suppose we make that binary. Suppose we say people who answered 3 or less, we give them a unhappy flag, and the people who answered 4 or 5, we'll give them a happy flag. Okay, so it's are you happy, true or false, right? Binary. Now suppose we then take that and we subset the graph on the right. Well, what you get is this. So for the people who are happy, it's very difficult to see which of these 2 things wins, but for the people who are unhappy, that's false. Very, very clear result that the people who don't like the UI today think the UI should be more opinionated. And that's really interesting, right? Because you probably want to listen to the people who don't like the UI. Because as long as you don't really annoy the people who do like the UI, they're probably going to be okay with some change. But if you want to bring more people into the project, you probably want to listen to the people who are unhappy. So that's really interesting. And that's just one example of where you can start combining things. And I showed more of this in the previous demo where I was looking at Catello as a binary flag, right? And there's so many more of these we could do. We could look at provisioning. We could look at new users versus old users, whether or not you use provisioning, whether or not, let's say Catello, whether or not you're happy with Foreman as a whole. We've used the how happy are you with the UI in this example, but there's a question right at the top as to how happy are you with Foreman as a project. So there's tons of ways we could facet this and then dig into the data. And I think that's what you're likely to see in any kind of conclusions piece that's going to get written to go after this. Login screens were particularly fine. Slight preference here for the very plain part, page 3. Fair enough. Content, again, big wins for Catello, huge update in people who actually use Kitello. You know, they've now overtaken the people who don't manage content at all, which is really cool. The other one that's really impressive is this is the first year where we've added Ansible in as a question. So if you remember in 2018, one of the options was, do you want to manage Debian content? And of course, we added that. So that didn't make sense to be in here anymore. So I replaced that option with Ansible. And you can see in 1 year, it's actually shot right up and it's actually even more desired than Python. And I think I mentioned that last time as well, but just to call it out again. So that's really good. And then looking at development, development was interesting. We asked the question whether people want to contribute back. And this is actually interesting. The people who wanted to, if assuming these are the same people, may not be the case, then the people who wanted to contribute and couldn't figure out how have gotten bored and have moved over into the no column now because it's up here. So that's disappointing. There's always more work to do there to bring more contributors on, but that's life. Otherwise, you know, it's all pretty straightforward. The one thing I wanted to point out was this graph here. So this was where we asked, this is 2019 only because we didn't ask this question in 2018. And the question was, of these areas, do you contribute currently? Would you like to, or are you just not interested in that thing? And I think there's a couple of wins, a couple of things to take away here. Firstly is, okay, in every case, no interest in contributing is the largest thing. And the reason for that is because anyone who didn't answer this question, as in they just don't contribute, gets put into no, because I think it gives you a fair picture. So actually here you're seeing the whole like 100+ survey results rather than just the proportion of the people who answered the question. So you expect no to be very high. But within the green, which is currently contributing, versus blue, which is would like to, I think there's two things. One is that more people do contribute to bugs and triage than would like to, which is quite nice. You know, that's working. But in every other category, you've got nearly double or more than double in some cases, in fact, for the installer, triple the number of people wanting to help than actually helping. And that really shows you that there's a lot of work to do there. That we can really bring more people into the development and testing side of the community. So that's something to think about. And finally, there's another ratings question from the development point of view, but again, the numbers haven't really shifted that much. And so that's me. As I say, you'll be able to read all of this for yourself very soon, and then we'll get a conclusions post out where we dig into some of these questions with a little bit more of a sort of a focus on the things we think are worth talking about and things that we think are worth working on. So we might start looking at, you know, whether or not people contribute and what they find, or whether or not people use provisioning. So one example that occurred to me is like, if you facet on provisioning, are you using provisioning or not, and look at what plugins people use or how satisfied people are, you might well see that, you know, the workflows within provisioning are such that they're complex enough that people are less satisfied with the project, or maybe certain plugins correlate with less satisfaction or something like that. And so you can start trying to find out where the problems are in the community. Okay, so that's me. Thanks very much.
Great. Looks like a lot of work for the community, but yeah, this is very informative, and I think
Always a lot of work.
yeah, and I think with this information we have some direction to move on for the next year maybe. Yeah. So okay. So if you have any questions, guys, ask us on Freenode. You can catch us on Musdoon, or you can even comment on YouTube, and we would surely reply. So that's it from this community demo number 60. See you after 3 weeks.